Welcome back everyone, it's me Matt. Before we get started today, let me know in the comment section below what your favourite Russian infantry fighting vehicle is, either tracked or wheeled, because this one is certainly a contender that I wasn't aware of, and I'm actually pretty terrified of this thing. When it comes to wheeled infantry fighting vehicles, I don't have a huge love for them, because of course I'm a tracked guy, but this one, in the Russian context, certainly defies a little bit as to what I'm normally used to when we look at Russian infantry fighting vehicles, which of course mostly are tracked. And when we come across the current war in Ukraine, we know that infantry fighting vehicles, or any vehicles, are of course susceptible to drones and all sorts of nasty things going on today, and this vehicle is certainly no exception to that. But I feel this one is challenging some of the norms that Russian infantry fighting vehicle protocol has, and the fact of the matter is that wheeled vehicles are certainly getting a lot more praise and attention, and in all honesty, battlefield respect, because they're doing extremely well when it comes to mobility and fast maneuver, instead of trying to go off-road with heavy-duty tracked vehicles. Today, we're looking at Russia's VPK-7829 Bumerang, or basically an 8x8 amphibious armoured vehicle designed to break with the decades-old Soviet BTR thinking. Now, on paper, as I've been doing a little bit of research, it's meant to become a part of a modular family, as an armoured personnel carrier and an infantry fighting vehicle, and the base for reconnaissance, command and anti-tank and air defence systems, as well as ambulance, mortar and fire support roles. Now, I do love myself a good BTR, and that line of vehicles was very fast, it was cheap and widely used, but it carried serious compromises: rear-mounted engines, cramped side exits, and limited mine protection, and survivability that looked increasingly dated on a battlefield full of drones, mines, and top attack weapons. The Boomerang is Russia's attempt to answer a simple question: can a modern wheeled platform replace the old BTR philosophy without losing the mobility that made it so useful? So why is it that Russia's pushing towards the Boomerang instead of the classic BTR 60, 70 and 80 and even the 82 family? Those vehicles put speed, amphibious mobility and simple mass production ahead of troop comfort and protected dismounting. Infantry usually entered and exited through small side doors, which meant climbing out beside the vehicle instead of leaving space through a protected rear ramp. In urban fighting or under ambush, that is not a small detail that can actually define whether or not the vehicle is a battlefield taxi or a survivable infantry carrier, particularly going on in Ukraine right now. The Boomerang completely flips that layout around. The engine moves forward, opening the rear doors for a ramp, while the roof hatches remain as alternative exits. The crew is generally described as 3, with a spare for roughly 7 or 8 dismounts depending on the configurations. This makes it far more like a Western and global 8x8 vehicle like the Boxer or the Patria AMV, VBCI, Striker, rather than the direct continuation of the Soviet BTR silhouette. The design goal here, though, is pretty obvious. Let's keep the wheeled speed and amphibious flexibility, but give infantry a safer way in and out. And it's not just a bit of a, I would say, facelift. It's a complete change to mechanized troop learning and the way in which they've lived with this kind of tactic for a very, very long time in the BTR setup. The vehicle is pretty big, though. Being that it is an amphibious platform, it needs a lot of power to keep it going, and it is 8.8 meters long and just over 3.1 meters wide. Public figures vary on combat weight because prototypes, armor kits, and weapon modules change the number, but estimates generally sit from a mid-20-ton class up to low 30-ton class for heavier configurations. Most open source specifications describe a UTD-32TR turbocharged diesel with 500 horsepower range, with a road speed of around 100 km per hour and an operating range of 800 kilometers. Now that is pretty powerful, folks, and pretty good range for a wheeled vehicle. When you have that much power, you're obviously carrying a lot of weight, so it's kind of difficult to determine what's going on in the armor of this vehicle, but let's be honest, armor is not always the strongest suit when it comes to Russian doctrine, but I'm interested as to how this vehicle counters towards drones, which honestly is very difficult to see in the information that I found. The hull, though, is the heart of this design. The Boomerang uses a elevated, boxier shape than the older BTRs, trading the lower silhouette for an internal volume, buoyancy, and protection growth. It, of course, is amphibious with water jets visible at the rear, so it can cross rivers and water obstacles without bridging support. However, nowadays, it doesn't seem as though amphibious requirements are really the prominent feature needed on IFVs of today. Most of you complain about drones 24/7, and I would say amphibious capabilities are certainly something that isn't really destined for IFVs of the future. Protection details are very hard to verify, but the platform is usually associated with, of course, modular armor, ceramic elements, spore liners, mine resistance, NPC protection, and of course automated fire suppression systems. Some reports that I found claim frontal protection against 30mm fire and all-round resistance against heavy machine gun fire, though those claims could be treated as configuration dependent rather than universal setups. The key point though is not armor thickness, it's its layout. By moving the engine forward, the troops to the rear, Boomerang prioritizes survivability during the most dangerous moment when the infantry dismount under fire to the front. That makes the vehicle physically a lot larger, but a lot more realistic for the battlefield that Russia claims it's preparing for in the future of today. The Boomerang family is best understood through two headline versions, the K-16 and the K-17. The K-16 is the armoured personnel carrier, the simpler troop transport version, normally shown with remote weapon station carrying a 12.7mm heavy machine gun. That fits the APC role, moving infantry, protect them from fragments and small arms fire, and provide enough self-defense to survive the approach and withdrawal, and potentially even have some counter-UAS or anti-drone capabilities on there too. Hard to find information on that though. The K-17 is the infantry fighting vehicle, and this is where Boomerang becomes much more aggressive. Its most familiar weapon is the Boomerang BM, also known as the Epoch, an unmanned turret used across Russia's new generation of vehicle concepts. That modular, typical 30mm gun of the 2A42 automatic cannon and a coaxial 7.62mm machine gun, and 4 Cornet anti-tank guided missiles mounted in pairs on each side. This is kind of what terrifies me on this vehicle. Cornet is a very good anti-tank guided missile, and that 30mm cannon handles infantry and light vehicles, even drones at low altitude, very, very well. Soft targets and Cornets give this vehicle a very good standoff threat against tanks, bunkers, and fortified positions. The attraction of unmanned turrets is also in the major play here. Ammunition and weapons that are separated from the crew and the compartments, and the gunner and commander can fight through sensors, a big deal. This allows them to work through displays instead of sitting inside the turret baskets ready for a fin round to go through their face. That improves the internal layout as well though. They can reduce crew exposure, although it increases dependence on electronics, sights, stabilization, and of course, maintenance. Interestingly, there is also reports of a proposed fire support version. A 57mm gun module has been discussed for greater reach, for effect against larger drones, light armor, and infantry in cover. A 125mm wheeled tank destroyer concept has also been mentioned, which would turn the Boomerang from a troop carrier into something closer to the Russian answer to vehicles like the Centauro. But those remain far less certain than the basic K-16 and K-17 ideas. The review of the Boomerang is where the story becomes more complicated though. It's first appearing publicly around 2015 in the Victory Day Parade, and alongside other high-profile Russian modernization projects like the T-14 Armada and the T-15 Heavy IFE and the Kurganets 25. And at that moment, it looked like Russia was about to overhaul an entire generation of armored vehicles. I myself was quite interested to see the future of some of these, modernized vehicles. I've done many videos on them. That promise was a new family of modular platforms, heavy-tracked, medium-tracked, wheeled, all with better sensors, remote turrets, improved protection, and cleaner ergonomics. But, as we stand today, years later, the Boomerang has still not become a common Russian frontline vehicle. Now, it has appeared in prototypes, exhibitions, parades, and trial reporting, but not in a kind of large-scale service that would actually replace the BTR-80 or 82 fleets. State testing has been reportedly discussed, and reports in 2023 describe tests with a small number of vehicles. Earlier reports also suggested design changes after trials, including improvements to troop compartment conditions, and of course buoyancy, which again, I was surprised that they focused on buoyancy so much. Now the delay is because Russia's war in Ukraine of course is so heavy, and it's shown exactly why a vehicle like Boomerang is of course needed, but priorities may not be in precedence of this vehicle at the time. Mines, artillery fragments, drones, anti-tank missiles, and ambushes have punished older Soviet-style armor, and basically all vehicles, because all of you get very upset when I talk about any military vehicle of today, because all you ever put in the comment section is, drone will kill it. A rear ramp with better internal volume, improved mine protection and thermal sights, and remote weapon systems are not really just luxury features though. In the context of today, they are survival features. Yet the same war also creates pressure to produce proven systems quickly, not expensive immature platforms slowly like this one could be. And I'm not saying it would be, but it's not going to be cheap. This is a total detraction from something that they're used to with the BTR platform. So the Boomerang's biggest weakness, in my opinion, may not be its concept. The concept really does make sense. The weakness is whether Russia can afford, manufacture, maintain, and field it in numbers large enough to matter, and I'm sure they could, but I think they're focusing on other things first, maybe different equipment or tactics, who knows. A prototype can certainly impress though, and it has, whether it be at parades or as a replacement for the BTR family, it's doing quite well. But it has to survive budgets, the factories that are going to produce them, logistics, training, and of course combat attrition. That is the difference between technology demonstrators and a real mechanized force multiplier in wartime conditions at scale. So what's the final verdict on the VPK-7829 Bumerang? Now, as a design idea, it's one of the most important Russian armored vehicle concepts I've ever actually seen post-Soviet period. It really accepts and finally accepts that the old BTR layer has reached its complete limits and moves towards the global standard of a modern 8x8 vehicle. Front power pack, rear dismounting, modular armor, remote weapons, of course amphibious mobility, which I personally don't see a huge amount of value in, and a family of mission variants that are built on one chassis, which of course, like everything else of today, is modular. But as a service vehicle, the verdict is still, I would say, very much unresolved. The Boomerang is not yet the mass replacement that Russia was implying it could be. It remains, though, a strong symbolization, I would say, of modernization that's, of course, been delayed, but it's very promising, I would say quite technically interesting in the information that I found, and is really going into a digital landscape, but it's going to be held back by testing cost and production reality, and a war that is rewarding numbers as much as it is sophistication on the battlefield. And that's why it's worth studying. I think there's going to be a lot more interesting news coming about the Boomerang and what Russia wants its wheeled infantry fighting vehicles to become, even if the battlefield is still dominated by older machines and, of course, drones. I hope you enjoyed today's video, folks. If you enjoy deep dives like this, let me know. Leave me a like and a comment. And, of course, let me know what you want to look at for the next platform breakdown. There's always another vehicle, aircraft, or weapon system with a story behind the spec sheet that I like to talk about. Thanks again for joining me, folks. Have a wonderful day. All the best. Bye-bye.